we live in an age where people are having a really hard time finding a way to be happy. And I think that is so sad. And it hits us in retirement maybe because suddenly we don't have so many things to sort of overcompensate for the fact that we're not happy. But I think all of us, regardless of age, at least in the United States, we sometimes live very unhappy lives. And today I want to talk to you about a few things that you can give up that will immediately make you happier. I think now more than ever, one of the very first things to give up is just stop watching the news. Now, I stopped watching the news several years back. It was almost obsessive compulsive for me to watch the news. I remember when I'm old enough to remember when CNN came out with a 24-hour headline news program, and every morning, I mean, it was on. We were getting ready for work, getting the kids ready for school, and we were watching news. And we come home in the afternoon, we were watching news. But what we soon learned over time is that it's not really 24 hours of news. It's 30 minutes of news that they just repeat over and over and over for 24 hours. And I heard Barry Weiss from the Free Press the other day, and this was not her quote, but she was talking about somebody who said this, is that the news sort of left all the news that's fit to print years ago, and they went with all the news that fits the narrative. And so depending on what news you watch, it pretty much tells the world who you are. But the news is not designed to give you good feelings. The news is designed to wrap you up and warp you and make you angry with people and get you shaking your fist at the world. Now, I still stay up with the news. I have several news people that I read, specifically on X, used to be Twitter. I have some news sites in my Feedly account that gives me updates through the day. And so I have a few investigative reporters that I read, and I have a few other people that I trust, that I've trusted over the years that I read. But I don't force myself onto the TV any longer to watch the news. It is a happiness stealer, to be sure. I think another important thing that we need to stop, if we're doing this at all, is to just stop comparing ourselves to other people. This is particularly true for people in retirement. Maybe I don't have as good a home as somebody else who's retired, or maybe I'm not driving as new a car as somebody else who's retired, or maybe I'm not traveling as much as somebody else who's retired, or, all these things go on. But we have been programmed throughout our life to do this. That whole keeping up with the Joneses thing, buying the next big gadget so that we can be as good as somebody else. These kinds of things just rob us of joy because we are constantly seeing ourselves in a negative way compared to everybody else. We rarely ever say, well, I'm so much better than so-and-so because I got this or because I did that, and so I feel really good about myself. That's not the way the human psyche works. And we need to sort of back off of that. And when we catch ourselves, just have a good talk to ourselves. Sit down and talk to ourselves really good and hard that this is not productive and this is not bringing happiness into my life to compare myself to the people who live next door. And especially true for retired people, but we have learned it throughout our lives, is that we need to learn that it is okay not to stay busy all the time. We don't have to be productive every waking moment. It's okay to sit down and take a break. It's okay to watch that television show we really enjoy. It's okay to go to bed and leave some dishes in the sink that aren't washed yet. It's okay to, you know, not have to vacuum the floor every time somebody threatens to come by the house. I mean, these kinds of things are just, they just wrap us up in this idea that if we just stay busy, we can keep the world at bay. We can keep our emotions in check. We can stop ourselves from worrying about all the things that are going on. And sometimes we just have to sit down and let those things in for a little while and learn to deal with them. So I think even before you retire, learning that you do not have to stay busy all the time is a good skill set, because once you are retired, trying to find ways to stay busy just leads to more stress, and it sucks the happiness right out of our lives. One that I have had to deal with personally over the years is to let go of grudges and personal hurts that came along the way. Now, I've brought some on myself. There's no question about that. I've done some things throughout my life that whatever negative thing happened to me, I probably deserved it. But there are other times when it was not deserved, and somebody was just being outright mean, or someone was being deliberately hurtful because they got some kind of pleasure from it. And it's easy to live in that. I had a lot of negative things happen to me when I lived in Cleveland, Tennessee. And, I lived there on 3 separate occasions. And every time I have a stockpile of negative things that happened to me in Cleveland, Tennessee. And now when I go to Cleveland, if I'm going over there to do some photography, or if I'm going to see my daughter, or if I'm going over there to have something to eat with friends or whatever, those thoughts rush back in. And they aren't invited. They're just there. And I have to constantly tell myself, dude, you let this go a long time ago. Stop doing this to yourself. You forgave them. Move on. Don't get caught up in the bitterness of reliving it over and over and over, because it will suck the happiness. I mean, just like a vacuum cleaner. Take it right out of your life if you allow yourself to live there. It's done. Now, maybe you don't have anything to do with those people anymore. That's probably a good thing. But stop reliving the hurt, because it is not productive to your mental well-being. Another one that hits me kind of between the eyes, because it's something that I have done throughout most of my life, is to stop saying yes to things you just don't want to do. I am a people pleaser, in addition to being a person who doesn't like people. I am a people pleaser, and I will get asked to participate in something or to do something, and I will try to say no. But then this guilt comes over me, and I'm like, they're not really asking that much, and it's really okay. I should just go ahead and do it. But I don't want to, but I'll say yes. And I'm not happy doing it. I don't have a good time while I'm doing it. It's not a happy memory after I've done it. Why didn't I just say no? Learning to say no, setting boundaries, not saying no to everything, but if there are things that just don't fit your personality, I don't dance. So when people want to go to something and they want me to dance, I'm like, no, not going to happen. That's a pretty easy no. But there are other things, can you help me out on Saturday? Can I borrow your car? Can you loan me $100? I mean, all these kinds of things. And sometimes I just don't want to. And learning to say no, setting those boundaries, is very, very helpful and healthy. Now, I will give you a caveat, because this almost always happens. If you're not used to setting boundaries like this with other people, when you attempt to set them, you're going to set them probably harder than they need to be set. You're going to build that wall higher than it needs to go, and you're going to tick some people off. It's just going to happen. But until you learn to manage it, you need to leave that up there. And then you can gradually begin to lower the bar down to where you feel comfortable with the things you're saying yes to. And it goes a long way toward increasing the happiness of our lives. One that has helped me, I think, over recent years is to just say no to clutter, stuff that's in the way. And maybe I've gone farther than some people would go in decluttering my apartment and, trying to be more minimal in the way that I'm living. It's comfortable for me. What I'm doing is comfortable for me. But, I get comments from people. I love my stuff. I love the clutter. I love this. And that's fine. If that's what you love, that's fine. But studies have shown, and we're talking about studies here, not anecdotal evidence, but studies have shown that people that surround themselves with so much clutter live less happy lives. They have more mental crap going on inside of them. And I'm not talking about hoarders here. I'm just talking about people that stack their house full of trinkets and things and whatever that outlived their usefulness a long time ago. It's controversial, I know. I'll probably get pushback in the comments from this statement by people who don't want to give up their stuff. If you don't want to, don't. But for me, getting rid of some of those things in my surroundings made me a happier person. So you might give it a thought. Another one that sort of hits me close to home is to stop worrying about the things you cannot control. You can't control how people are going to react to your decisions. You can't control, in fact, you can't control most of things in life. Most of the time in life, things are out of our control. And I'm reminded, I see this clip every once in a while on YouTube. I think the movie was called Bridge of Spies with Tom Hanks. And he is working with a man who has been accused of spying on the United States. And every once in a while, he'll look at the guy. I mean, the guy's just calm. Nothing riles him up. Even crossing the bridge at the end, knowing that he might get shot when he gets back to his homeland. And Tom Hanks continually asks this question, are you not worried? And the man's answer is always the same. Would it help? Well, no, it won't help. And there is this passage in Scripture that is escaping me at the moment, but basically it's something along the line of, you can check me in the comments, along the line of, how many of you have added even 1 inch to your height by worrying about things? How many of you have added any hair to your head by worrying about it? You don't add anything to life by worrying about things you cannot control. And I'm not saying just go through life with your hands up and say, c'est la vie, but at the same time, sometimes we get these irrational fears about things that we have absolutely no control over whatsoever. And the only thing controlling us is the fear that we've allowed to be in our lives. And it is taking the happiness away from us. And we need to learn how to deal with it. Now, for some people, that may mean going to therapy, going to see a clinician, going to their pastor. And for others, it may just mean they sit down and give themselves a good talking to. It's a wide spectrum. I think another thing that we need to stop, especially as retirees, is to stop living in the past. But we can't live in the fact that, we used to make $80,000 a year and now we're making $40,000 a year on Social Security. We can't live back there. We can't live in the fact that we used to have this big house and now we're in a double-wide trailer. Or, whatever it is that life has given us. If we're constantly looking back and thinking that that was better, or minimizing the life we have now because we're constantly looking back, all we're doing is telling ourselves, you're not happy. You can't be happy. You'll never be happy. Because this was back here. That's when you were happy, remember? So we have to kind of give up living back there and learn to fully embrace the present, because this is where the joy is at. We also need to give up perfectionism. Now, I like to think that I am not a perfectionist, and I've talked about this in previous videos. I like to think that I'm not a perfectionist. When we were building our house in Arkansas, and it was my dad, my grandfather, my uncle, and me, and my grandfather was in charge. He was the contractor. And we were putting things together, and maybe something didn't get nailed in perfectly. It was sturdy, it was good, but maybe the nail got bent, or, these kinds of things. Rather than pull the nail out and rehammering it to make it perfect, my papa would say, well, it's good enough for who it's for. And I've kind of lived my life along those lines. It's good enough for who it's for. I don't have to be the best administrator in education. I just need to be an adequate one. I don't have to be the best English teacher. I just need to be an adequate one. So perfectionism, I would like to think, has never really been a problem for me, except that I do believe it's what drives my procrastination. That I will hesitate starting something because I'm afraid I can't do it. Not that I'm going to be perfect, but I'm afraid I can't do it. Or I'm afraid it will take too much out of me. Or I'm afraid it won't be good enough for who it's for. And I sort of went down this rabbit hole on this channel, and I've talked about this as well, and that for a while I was using a teleprompter, and I would basically just put my outline up on the teleprompter and still kind of talk off the top of my head. But as time went on, I was trying to get my videos more and more perfect with less and less editing, getting rid of all the ums and the ahs and well, and so thens and all those kinds of things that I do for fill-in. And I began to script my videos and read the script from a teleprompter, trying to make it as perfect as possible. And it just stripped the joy out of my channel. I can't put it any other way. It wasn't fun to make those videos. I thrive more in an effort like this. I have an outline of 10 things with maybe one sentence to describe it. And everything else is just extemporaneous off the top of my head, that it's a stream of consciousness talk. And that's where I'm most comfortable. So this idea that we have to be perfect, or that our retirement has to be perfect, or we can't enjoy it, it just steals the joy and the happiness from us if we live there. And I think something that I learned a while back that I've carried over into my retirement is to stop spending money on things that are not bringing joy to our lives. Back when you've got a job, especially if it's an adequate job and you're making more money in a year than you need to live, and you sort of, you spend money here and there on stuff because it looks nice, or maybe it's on sale, or you're on a trip somewhere and you want a souvenir. And so, you're just kind of throwing money here and there and everywhere. In retirement, we can't do that anymore. We don't have that kind of luxury, most of us. And so we have to start zoning in on, what am I really going to spend my money on that's going to be the biggest bang for my buck? For me, that is travel. Used to be photography. I've gotten rid of most of my photography stuff. And I've narrowed it down to just a few items that I use to take some very simple pictures anymore, but it's travel. And I try to travel as inexpensively as possible. But if I'm going to spend extra money on something, it's going to be that, because that truly feeds me. That feeds my soul. That brings me happiness. Even going back to someplace I've been 7 or 8 times already, I just breathe easier when I get there. It's just wonderful. That may not be your thing. For one of my son-in-laws, that might be new fishing gear or a new bass boat. For another one of my son-in-laws, it might be a new motocross bike. And these are things that have never really interested me that much, but we all have our thing, and we find the thing that brings us joy. We find the thing that brings fulfillment to us, and that's where we start concentrating, spending our money, rather than just on every shiny object that comes along, which is maybe what we used to do when we had a real job. So these are the 10 things. Now, you may have another that you want to put in the comments. I welcome 11 or 12 or 13 or 25 things if that's what you want to add. I'd love to get your opinion on which one of these 10 things maybe you need to do to be happier, or which one of these things you've already done and you have experienced the fact that it's made you happier. Or maybe you want to leave a comment just saying that I'm full of crap and you don't buy any of this. It's okay. Anyway, I appreciate you sticking around to the end, and I'm going to put an end cap on this video, and a video will pop up here that maybe you might be interested in, and it will be one that YouTube says, no, I didn't pick it. YouTube says you might like this one because of everything else you watch. Maybe you want to click it too. Thanks for watching.